everyone, my name is Declan McGlynn. Welcome to Friday Forum, live from our brand new second facility here in London. Every week we bring you exclusive tutorials, artist interviews and industry insight, and today is no different because we're joined by Creative Director JC Concato to look at getting more hands-on with your DAW. So today we are sitting in Studio One in our second facility here in London and right in front of this brand new 48 channel SSL Duality Delta. We're going to talk a little bit about getting more hands-on with your music in the studio, and remember, if you want to come and learn to mix on this very desk, as well as learn about sound design, mastering and a lot more of that good stuff, make sure you check our courses at pointblanklondon.com. And of course we are completely live. So get your questions in for JC and we'll get to them throughout the broadcast. Welcome.
Hello.
This is nice.
This is very nice to be here indeed.
It is. Bit of a change.
Yes, absolutely.
Before we get into any of this, as of course we have loads of chat, people are chatting all the time, they were just talking about unbalanced cables.
Oh.
And we were just saying, is there ever a reason to use unbalanced cables?
I mean, sometimes you don't have a choice, just
Yes,
because the device is not balanced, designed to be balanced. But yes, you can have sometimes, I've seen it where you hook up hardware like a sampler, let's say, to a mixing desk. You can have a hearth loop, creating a hum. So
balanced cables can actually cause hum?
Yeah, because you're getting loop, it's a hearth loop basically.
So
you disconnect it on one side and leave it on the other side going into the desk, for example, is one way to cure
always teaching.
the problem.
Always learning. Anyway, enough about unbalanced cables. Analog, digital, that's not really what we're here to talk about today.
No, it's not. I mean, there's plenty of discussions.
Yes.
What we're talking with console versus the AW is that obviously there's the whole discussion going on about mixing in the box. Does a console sounds better? And I think, again, this discussion is not really what we want to start with because it's a matter of taste.
Yeah, totally.
It's what you want to achieve. They are, and what works for you, you know. And yes, if I could have one of those boards at home in my studio, I probably would, because I personally prefer, you know, sitting behind one of those desks. There's something about it which is quite magical.
Absolutely.
You know, it's part of it as well. But it's what works for you, and there has been plenty of discussion, and we've seen a lot of engineers like Andrew Chubbs, for example, lately coming out and say, well, I mix entirely in the box now. And when he says entirely, it's 100%. There's not a single outboard. It's all plug-in in the box, and he's getting the sound that he wants. Yeah. So I think as long as you know the techniques.
He's certainly got enough hardware.
And he's got, it's not that he hasn't got the hardware, obviously, you know. And he's coming from mixing fully analog, so he's gone completely the other way. For lots of different reasons. He can handle project differently, he can recall stuff, you know, all those different things. So the discussion is not about that as far as I'm concerned. Both can work for you, and what works for you. As long as you've got the right techniques, you understand. For me, mixing, there's a bit of science behind mixing before you can get to the creative part of mixing. If you understand the whole analog thing and how it works and the signal and balance, that's going to work for you. The same way in the digital domain, you need to understand a little bit of the science of what is digital audio, how does it work, because it's when it's not used properly that it may not be as good. Yeah. So for me, that's the whole thing. Now, the whole issue about summing, not summing in the box, outside the box, matter of taste, lots of different opinion. I think summing's got digitally summing in the box has a bit of bad press because originally, 10, 15 years ago, it wasn't that good. Yeah. The processor wasn't up to speed for that. You could still edit and stuff, but mixing in the box was not that great summing in. But we've gone a long way now.
And when you say digital summing in the box, you mean creating groups and buses, basically?
Yeah, and just basically summing everything within the box, not coming out and not mix, you know, the whole thing of adding up 24, 48 channel together. That is summing, effectively, all going to that master bus. Way back, I think maybe the processors were not able to handle that much information, but I think now it's not the case anymore. So what we want to discuss is there are certain things that is really good about a console, no matter what, whether you mix it, you know, and it's hard to bring that in your DAW as well. Some of the approach that makes the console a bit special. So I think that is the discussion today,
cool.
Really.
Let's dive in.
Let's dive in. So, I mean, the first thing with the console is if we look at it's the approach, the way you work on it. So here I've got one project and I've got two versions of it. One split across the first 24 channel of the desk. I've had to compromise a little bit to get everything in, but I've got my 24 here. And one of the great things about it is how quickly you can get a balance going, I think.
Yeah.
So the best way to probably go about it is I'm going to bring down everything, start playing the track somewhere there. And you see, I mean, I love the fact that we're already hands-on. You know what I mean? We're already hands-on. So I'm just going to push just a little bit to get the vibe going.
Yeah.
But what I love about it is the fact that you can grab several channels together. See, I can do pans, I can grab several channels here. I've got some synth here. Let's see what it is. Fairly quickly, I'm getting a bit of a... I can grab things very quickly and I can... Straight away I've got a... And straight away, that's how you build a mix on the desk.
Yeah.
You build it up and you get a feel. I probably would do a couple of paths and then start getting my balance and understanding, okay, what are the important parts in the track, the direction I want to go with, in terms of being creative.
Do you think that one of the downsides of people using the mouse a lot in the studio is that they rarely reach for the fader, even though that's almost the most important part? They'll go, it's too loud, let's put a compressor on, it's too loud, let's put a limiter on.
All those
it's
kind
too
of
loud, let's EQ something out.
Absolutely.
And just process it instead of just turning it down.
Just turning it down. The balance is the first thing. I haven't done anything yet. I'm just balancing and then you're getting a feel for it.
Yeah.
And that I think is a great thing about the console that you need to bring into the DAW. And it's really difficult to do that in the DAW because if you bring that, and I've got to start going with my mouse on every single fader.
Yeah, and because it's one by one.
It's one by one. It's not the same feel.
The mix decision changes every time you move the fader.
Exactly.
So it's like incremental.
Instead of like you've seen how quickly I built a rough balance. I'm not saying it's finished, far from it, and it's a mix, but I've mixed the balance literally in 2 minutes.
Yeah.
You know, and I got a balance.
Each movement informs the other.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So how can we translate that? Well, it's simple. I mean, that one thing that is great about that desk, obviously, it's also a wicked controller.
Yeah.
But obviously, you don't have to have an expensive controller like that. What you can do, I mean, this desk is great. You can literally flip from focus mode to analog mode. Analog to DAW, sorry. Mm-hmm. So here I was in my focus mode. I was in my DAW. So in my analog mode, I was focusing on the desk. And if I go there now, I'm DAW. Everything has gone to zero. All my faders are on zero. It's a new session that I've triggered. So what I'm going to do now instead is I'm going to go like that. I've got my two faders and I'm going to cut everything. Because this time around, what I'm simulating is working in the box. So effectively, everything goes to, before that, everything was separated on the desk. Now, I've got everything coming out of two channels here. So let's play that, turn it down. Yeah, everything's coming out of two channels. Okay? So I can recreate the same if I go into DAW mode, and I'm going to bring that in. And if you guys look at the screen, you see all my faders.
Yeah.
Are moving.
So instead
this time
of
around,
staying at zero and then the analog
and then the analog I do my level. Here I work in the box.
Okay.
So with a controller, you can do that.
Yeah, and this is Mackie control, right?
This is Mackie controller. I mean, this desk is using the Mackie control protocol for Logic and HUI with Pro Tools. And if I carry on here, I can rebuild my balance the same way I did.
The stereo out is down as well. Too keen.
Too keen, you see.
Let's just keep it nice and quiet.
So here we are, and we start bringing the stuff.
Yeah, I mean, because Mackie control is a popular protocol. It's not just available on desks like this. I mean,
Yeah.
you can get Mackie control, little Behringer Mackie control controllers that'll do the same thing. Well, not quite the same,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
similar.
absolutely. And then if I set up the pan here in the same way, I set the pan and then I can start using those to pan in the same manner. So if we look at the control here, I'm setting my pans again in the same way. You know. So once you get really familiar with what you're doing, you can So what I've done here is I've recreated that feel of being able to bring, you know, a balance, several faders on. So a controller for me is quite essential if you're mixing. If you want to get that kind of feel and move away from the mouse, one thing at a time, that is quite vital.
And would you recommend the technique of bringing all the faders down and slowly bringing things back in?
I tend to do that, yeah. I tend to do that because you get a feel, and sometimes you get it a bit wrong, and sometimes I kind of start again from scratch, and I'm kind of like, because you know, it's that kind of like how you respond on an emotional level to music, because people who listen to songs don't know anything, or most people don't know anything about the entire production process. All they're interested is they listen, and that's what they connect or not to. So you need to try when you mix to really keep that in mind as well. What it is that people connect to in this song, what is the hook, what is, you know, all those kind of things. So I think this technique allows you to do that.
Yeah, cool.
And also, so if we're going back to another project, I'm going to save that one now. We're going to go back to the, so if faders are all coming down. Let's bring the other one.
Yeah, I mean, as I was saying, I mean, Mackie control isn't exclusive to expensive equipment. I think you can get the old Behringer BCFs, the old classic, which have motorized faders too.
Yeah, absolutely.
You get them for about 100 quid second hand, maybe 150 quid second hand. Eight motorized faders.
Absolutely, and you flip through the banks.
Yeah.
And I think it's really, you know, really helpful to have that. Same with EQ. If we're carrying on with that philosophy of EQ and stuff, if I start. And for me, just having a transport control feels more natural than.
My head keeps spinning around, just wanna scream and shout. Hurt me
So
out,
I'm going to take this
my
vocal, for
misery.
example.
Won't you come and set me free? 'Cause I've been sitting here like a bird with broken wings.
You know, and straight
My
away,
head
what you can
keeps
do
spinning around, just wanna scream
when
and
you start
shout.
EQing, for
Put
example,
me out my misery. Won't you come and set me free? 'Cause I've been sitting here like a bird with broken wings. Trying to fly, I hit the ground. You're the air. My head keeps spinning around. Just wanna scream and shout. Put me out my misery. Won't you come and set me
you see
free?
the way you EQ, the way you compress.
'Cause I've been sitting here like a bird with broken wings. Trying to fly, I hit the ground. You're the air. My head keeps spinning around. Just
You see, I'm
wanna
compressing and
scream and
EQing.
shout.
I haven't looked a single
Put
time
me out my
at anything.
misery.
I'm just going with.
Won't you come and set me free? 'Cause I've been sitting here
You know, you're just going with the feel. And that I think also is very, very important.
Yeah, I think the one thing that maybe hasn't been cracked in the controller market, and if you know of anything, please let us know, is the channel strip controller, being able to emulate what you've just done in over
I mean,
HUI
you
or
can,
microphone.
and I think, I mean, to be fair, I don't know it that well, how to use that into the Mackie control. I know with Pro Tools, this desk is working extremely well, where you can control all your plugin here, the channel plugins. So that's working really well. But if we were to do that on the other session, or let's keep the same session open for that matter.
Yeah, I think being able to just see the compression settings and the EQ settings at the same time, I mean, it seems trivial, but it does make a big difference.
It makes a massive difference.
Using things like the Slate VMR, which you can see everything at the same time, the new Sound Toys have adapted that process.
Yeah, absolutely. So here I'm going to select this channel here, so I'm selecting it here. I'm going DAW now, and I'm going to go EQ. I believe. Yeah. So now I've got an EQ for this track, for the track 22 here.
Yeah.
So if we were to look here at the gain, so you could recreate, you see straight away now we're getting into that mode. And straight away I think that's quite nice, and you can reset very quickly as well. So again, here I could start.
My head keeps spinning around, just wanna scream and
You
shout.
would rarely opt for the Logic channel EQ over the SSL EQ,
Well,
but it's good for thin notch EQing and things very specific for
Again, exactly. I mean, again, nothing stops you from, we can talk about that after that. What's great about a console is, like I said, you know, you tend to go to a mixing room for the console, for the monitoring. I personally love SSL because I've worked with them all the time. So for me, it feels really natural when I go to the EQ and I know what to expect. I know exactly how they sound. And I'm not, you know, mostly when you mix in a mix room, you're going to use the EQ of the desk, you know, for most of the part. There will be certain part, the lead vocal, you may choose a special EQ because you need it for that particular sound and stuff like that. So you could apply the same. Obviously, by default, you've got the Logic EQ. But I would advise that to get the kind of feel of a desk, you could set up your DAW as a template. And if there are two EQ and you know you love the kind of SSL type of EQ and another type of EQ, you could have a couple, mute them, bypass them, so it's like your desk when it starts fresh, completely reset, you know, not on. And then you can start having that feel again. You could do that.
It's definitely more immediate.
So I would strongly, instead of, you know, if you start going there and going into a fader and looking at which one should I be using, that or should I go there? You know, no, set up a template. That's one of the beauty of the AW, the fact that everything is so quickly recordable. You know, you can record everything so quickly. So on that front, I would really advise doing that.
Yeah.
And you recreate a mixing desk into your. And obviously, yes, there will be time where you're going to be thinking a bit more, kind of, oh, maybe I should try a bit of a pull tech vibe, or you know, whatever on a certain part. But commit, go quick. A lot of the mix engineers always say, and you've got to school, and I used to be quite slow at mixing personally. I could spend a day and a half. Some mix engineer mix in 4 hours, 6 hours, no more, because they get tired. It's about being quick. So, and because you make decisions and you live with them. And I think instead of pondering about the kick for 2 hours and the snare, and you know, so I think there's a lot to be learned in that. I think.
Yeah, totally. I mean, even as you're talking about loading templates and stuff, you could also load things like the NLS from Waves and things that actually emulate.
I was about to go more into there a bit later because we're going to talk a little bit about the sonic aspect of a mixing desk. So, without going into what is better. Because like we said, it's different opinion, they're all valid. There's some great more and more mixes are in the box, and it seems to work as well, you know. If a guy like Andrew Shop said that he can't hear any difference in terms of his mixing, you've got to trust that, really. They are different, no doubt. Of course, analog gives you something. And older desk, a certain type of really old school analog desk. The problem, you can't recall. So you do the mix, and you do it, you can work on one mix at a time, and once you've undo your mix, that's it. To bring it back, it's a nightmare. Obviously, SSL has always been, that's why SSL is so present in mixing rooms since their first devices, because you've got total recall on the SSL. And although you've got to do it manually, you see, you go into total recall mode. So you do everything manually because it's not digital, it's a purely analog desk. But you still can at least recall something. So let's say I'm going here. You see here it's moving. So if I'm not on the right, it goes yellow. And as soon as I've matched it as it was, it's gone. And then you start moving.
Okay, cool.
So it's a picture, it's a snapshot of
That's
your channel.
Job
but
for the assistant.
Exactly. Although back in the days you could only do one at a time. Now you can do 4 at a time
cool.
on each side. So you could effectively have 2 person do 4. So much quicker recall. But still, it takes a bit of time to recall, plus all the outboard and everything else. That's one of the advantages of DAW, obviously. One of the big advantages of DAW,
absolutely,
load the project, it's back on. So you can work on multiple projects at the same time, etc. So I think that's why a lot of people nowadays tend to work either in the box or in hybrid mode. Mm-hmm. You know, and I think as a hybrid mode where you do a bit of the maybe pre-mixing in there, and then maybe start bringing on your stereo pair and you have all your BVs on 2 channels. You know, there's lots of different ways. And if you work in that hybrid mode, I think, I'm still discovering that desk, but I think it's absolutely amazing for that purpose. Mm. You know, the fact that you can switch from analog mode, like I am now, to DAW mode, just like that. And you can access both at the same time. So here I'm in analog mode, but then I still can use that to control the fader over there, as you can see. So I control my analog and I'm controlling my DAW at the same time. Pretty cool. So I think, you know, they've got it really right. I'm becoming a big fan, and I like the sound of an SSL. So
of course, absolutely.
For me, it works. You know, some people prefer other. You know, that's absolutely fine. But so one of the things about desk that people talk a lot about is the fact that analog is never the same. It's all electronic components. Mm-hmm. So especially the older the desk, 2 channels are not quite the same. So that gives you that kind of musicality and non-linear, that at DAW everything is identical, that's what it is. And that's what some people prefer in the analog domain, is that kind of like slightly randomness. So like you've said, you can bring that with, some plugins do that, we create that type of things. NLS from Waves, for example.
Slate VCC.
Slate, plugin Aliens, the console.
BX console.
The BX console, pretty cool as well. They've simulated a lot. They modeled a lot of channels, so you're getting that kind of randomness. So it's one thing that you can bring in again. So if your thing is, if you're after that analog sound, then you can, again, bring those plugins into your channel path straight away. As soon as you start pushing your faders, and you've got a controller, it's not far from being on a console. That's one way to look at it. Another thing that people talk about, obviously, is I'm going to take that back into read mode, is the sound of it, the kind of harmonic distortion that you can gain. Yeah. And I mean, this desk is absolutely fucking brilliant for that.
It has dedicated.
Well, it has. You've got your line input, so typically you'd be like.
My head keeps spinning around.
Just have a trim and you're on.
Scream and shout, put me out my misery. Won't you come and set me free?
And it's a thing that not uncommon thing that you would do on the
desk. 'Cause
desk,
I've been sitting here like a
normally I probably would do that. I probably would do it as a parallel. And that's a trick I always used to do on vocal, have some parallel harmonic distortion that you could bring next to each other. So here, this one I have here, let's have a listen.
My head round, just wanna scream and shout, put me out my misery.
Come through the mix a little bit more.
Won't you come and set me free?
And you can dose it.
I've been
so you can do it on an analog. Now, this desk has always something really great, which is you can flip the input and start using the mic input, which is something every console. That's what people love, the sound of certain mic input and being able to drive them a little bit harder. So you select that channel, and I'm going to instead make it input flip and mic input. So now the monitor goes into the, I hope.
My head keeps spinning around, just
obviously, you're driving much harder, so
put me out my
you're going to
misery.
need to put the pad.
Won't you come and set me free? 'Cause I've been sitting
But now I'm going through the
here
mic
like a
amp.
bird with
And the mic pre
broken
on
wings.
this SSL has got
Trying
two
to fly,
types.
I
The
hit
clean one, the
ground.
super analog, that was
You're
based on the Care, I
air
think,
I
9000.
haven't found.
And you can drive them.
My head keeps spinning around, just
You can drive
wanna
them.
scream
But
and
it also
shout.
have this
Put
thing
me
called
out my
VHD,
misery.
variable harmonic distortion.
Won't you come and set me free?
So you press the drive in.
'Cause I've been sitting here like a bird with broken
And you
wings.
see straight away they sound a bit
Trying
different.
to fly, I hit the ground.
The analog,
You're
the clean analog,
air I haven't found.
the drive-in VHD.
My
On
head
top of it
keeps
with the
spinning
VHD,
around, just wanna scream and
you can
shout.
balance,
Put
you
me
can
out my
dose how much of the second
misery.
and third harmonics.
Won't you come and set me free? 'Cause I've been sitting
And there's- I
here
mean,
like
there's-
a bird
we
with
talked a lot
broken
about
wings.
in
Trying
FFLs
to
over the
fly,
years
I
about
hit the
harmonic
ground.
distortion,
You're the
how to
air
achieve it
I
using built-in plugins, some free plugins.
Exactly,
I
and
mean,
again,
there's
so
loads of stuff out
yeah,
there for
and
that,
so for example, I know there are lots of plugins that can create harmonic distortion. Like the Wave NLS has this thing where you can simulate the mic pre using a mic pre on the channel of an
similar to
SSL
that,
or the desk, and similar, very much similar to that. It hasn't got the variable distortion because that's a new design from SSL, but you're getting that. So again, you can get that back into your DAW.
Yeah,
All those
absolutely.
great things that have made the reputation of a console. You can bring that a little bit in your DAW.
Yeah, and just touching on something about gain staging, because I know we had a couple of questions about that before we dive into the rest of the questions that you guys are sending in.
Yeah, I mean, that's for me, that's the one thing that is quite important as well that you can learn from the analog world. Analog world, you would be careful about what comes in, what comes out. You would be careful about your connection, whether you work in -10 or +4, depending on the gear you have. All that is really important.
Yeah.
And I think there's something to learn about that. Sound engineering mixing can be very creative, but there's a science part behind it, which I think the more you're going to know about it, the more comfortable. When you make decision and you be creative, the technical part is there, you know it, it's on the side, you've already have your plan and you're not limited because of that. Now, on the gain stage level, let's talk about that.
Spinning around, just wanna scream and shout.
You see, for example, I wouldn't do
Put
that
me out my
unless I wanted to abuse
misery.
it.
Won't
If you
you
look at those meters
come
here.
and set me free?
But otherwise, I would make sure I've got it pretty much in the good
'Cause
part,
I've
the
been
sweet
sitting
spot.
here like a bird with broken wings,
And
trying to
let's go
fly.
further in the track.
My head keeps spinning.
Taking the cycle.
Goodbye
You see, that's
to
a fairly decent master level if you look at our VU meters here.
baby, I'm yours to buy.
It's a pretty good, decent level. And you wouldn't drive it completely. I mean, sometimes you can if you want that sound, but you wouldn't have it flat out. You're aware of the gain stage. What the gain stage allows you to do is that when you start going into an insert, into a compressor, an EQ, everything works, everything goes into at the right level, comes out at the right level into the next one, otherwise you're getting problem. So with analog gear, you had to be much more aware of it. Now, what I've seen in the past with DAW is the fact that with floating point, floating bit point, within the DAW, there's only one time when you come out into the DA that here is fixed and you can't clip that. But internally, you've got such a massive headroom that I've seen people getting into the habit of not the best practice, in my opinion. Let me illustrate that. I'm going to try to illustrate that somehow. So let's cycle here, and we're going to take that vocal again. I think it's easier to.
My head keeps spinning around, just wanna scream and shout.
And I'm going to clean it here
Put
now.
me out
Let's
my
go back to.
misery. Won't you come and set me free? 'Cause I've been sitting here
That's great.
like
So
a
now
bird
I'm back
with
to normal.
broken wings.
So here, for example, I've seen people making the mistake
My head keeps
of overloading a channel, clipping, which is okay on an individual channel in Logic. I'm not saying it's not, as long as you don't clip the outside of it. But for me, there's a downside to it, and I'm going to illustrate why there is. I'm going to go CD with the gain. I'm going to put plus 24 gain. Let's see what it does to us.
My head keeps spinning around, just
And the reason it's distorting, it's because it's clipping that. So if I was to bring down the master fader here for the 21, which is coming out
My
here.
head keeps spinning around, just wanna scream and shout.
So that's just identical.
Put me out
It's
my
identical signal,
misery.
Identical, it's fine, you know.
Won't you come
But
and
I
set
mean,
me free?
that's a bit weird having to bring the master fader just because
'Cause
you've
I've
boosted
been
that.
sick.
Crazy. On top of it, the problem with doing that is, let's say I'm bringing a compressor into the picture. I want to compress the signal, and on purpose I've put it after the gain, you know.
Sitting here like
You
a
see here,
bird with
I've got my
broken
threshold at
wings.
0,
Trying
and I'm
to
still
fly,
compressing.
I hit the ground.
Yeah.
So
You're the air I haven't found.
it's a problem.
Yeah.
It's a big problem.
I mean,
So
this is obviously a very extreme example. But
it's an
you
extreme
can be a bit
example,
more
but I
subtle,
wanted to show why. If you take the gain off, and we are back to normal, and I'm going to bring that to normal as well,
Don't want to be alone.
then those
My
numbers
heart
start to mean something again.
Yeah.
Because those are dBs,
Helps.
you know, it's dB minus dB.
Yeah.
So if you start going out of a good gain staging, then suddenly those numbers don't mean anything anymore.
Yeah.
You may as well throw them out, you know. So for me, because I've worked with console, I started with console, in the box, I apply absolutely everything that I've learned from the console. Because except that I'm learning more about certain aspect of the AW. What I've learned more was about bit depth, sample rate conversion, those things that are important to the digital sound.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to make sure that I was using the best possible practice digitally.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
that's kind of the overall idea.
Yeah. I mean, obviously there's loads of this. kind of
There's
stuff
a
in
lot
our
more.
courses,
I mean,
so
for example, what we could do quickly. Let's look at that.
We've got
if we've
quite a lot of
time.
questions here. I'll just.
I'll take
start
the question
throwing them
very
at you.
quickly, but very quickly, what I'm going to do is again that I'm on the right channel, I think. Yeah. Because I'm not on the DAW, so I'm going to do that. Okay, I'm going to do that. So we're just going to play this track a little bit, just a little bit.
Beats through the storm, and all I want is to turn
Yeah, I mean, that's the
it
other
all
benefit
around.
of having a controller is
Close
both fader riding, the last stop.
to say goodbye.
You know what I mean? And if you look at
Baby, I'm yours to find.
And now we're going to put it back in read mode. Now, if you look at the automation, I'm going to zoom. Actually, I can do it here. You see, that's the beauty of...
Oh, yes.
I'm really loving having the controller. Look at this automation. I've seen so many people write points like that. And instead of doing that, do things like that. And trust me, I've been guilty of it, so I know what it is. And you do that. And that's the difference between that and that. That is far more musical. Again,
Yeah.
You've trusted your ear. You haven't gone, oh, here I need to do plus 1 dB. And I've been so guilty of that, and I try not to do that anymore. What you could even do, if you can't afford a 8 or 16 or 24 channel controller banks, just I think there's some product who do only one.
Yeah,
and
Presonus is one of those. Yeah.
literally you've got one, but use that. It's so much more musical. So much
Yeah.
more musical. Again,
Absolutely.
I was doing it not looking at my automation, just listening and responding. And I think that is crucial. So
Yeah.
I think that those are the main points that I think we wanted to touch on.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's loads more of that type of stuff in our courses, but
Obviously,
we have limited time today,
yeah.
so I just want to dive into questions for you.
Let's take on as many questions as you
Let's
as
do
we
it.
can.
Mohanjit Chahal's got loads of questions coming in. The most immediate one is, how do you decide which part of the track needs to be most up front? As in like vocals or...
Well, I mean, if you have vocal, depending on the nature of the track, is it a dance track, is it a pop track, are you mixing, is it for the radio? You know, what it is, you know, is it an indie band? Because even within vocal track, it can be some music, you want the guitar blaring to you and the vocal maybe a bit more in there. If it's a pop track, you want the vocal to drive, especially in the chorus. So you've got to understand the style and play. I'm balancing, and you're like, what does it feel? What drives me? But if the vocal and it's a pop song and the vocal is driving, it's gonna have to be up there and cutting through, obviously.
And even if it's not, I mean, don't be afraid to, vocal write or fader writing isn't just for vocals.
It's for
if you've got an
everything.
instrumental track, if you're making club music.
It's for
bring things
everything.
in and
It
out,
brings the
synths,
dynamic as well.
Absolutely.
Let's say you're going to the big part of the track. It's the equivalent of going from verse to chorus. You start off building it, and to the chorus, many engineers, and I've started to do it more and more now, I have my chorus usually a dB louder than the rest of the song.
Yeah.
And then what I do on some part, I kind of build them up into the chorus. So you're building that momentum, and if the chorus is the big part, depends on the style of the song, depend on what you aim to achieve.
Yeah, totally. M.A. Rain is asking, sometimes there's a clash between the vocals and hi-hats, percussion, etc. What should be done? I guess that mid-range is such a
that mid-range is a problem.
with.
I think the priority is got to be the vocal, isn't it? It could be the clash that I've seen people boosting too much, boosting everything in the same region. So try to identify where is the clash. Is it in the 2K? Those 2 and 4K are very tricky things because that's where all the presence is. Panning is going to help as well. Compressor can help, EQing. There's going to be all those tools. Sidechaining can help sometimes.
Yeah, hyper-production TV, which is a great question here, which we've kind of touched on, but it's worth discussing again. Would you say that working on a console is mostly now down to workflow rather than sound, due to there being so many ways around gaining that console sound, i.e. SSL 500 module channels, etc.? And also those plugins we talked about.
Yeah, I think...
workflow is a big part of it.
Workflow is a big part of it, and I mean, for me, a console comes on its own also when you record, if you record a band.
Yes.
If you record a band, being able to route so much, send that to headphones, send that to that track, having that kind of in front of you control.
Yeah.
So that's really where it comes on its own. I love working with a console. Like I said, it depends on what works for you, what you can do, what works for the project, etc. Some people, some guys who work with maybe some indie bands who want really not analog sound, they're fully analog, from tape to analog console, maybe with not even on automation. Somebody like Steve Albini is very much coming from that world. Very much hands-on. Everything is done at the recording. The decisions are made at the recording. I think he mixes extremely quickly. It's all valid. Depends on what works for you, for what you want to achieve.
Yeah, totally. Probably got time for one more question. Charles Janet's asking, when mixing, can you get a good house mix, as in house music, with monitors which are 5-inch cones?
I mean, you can if you understand how they work. Check on headphones, check in the car. You don't have to have a wide range set of monitors.
I mean, the NS10s don't have any kind of serious
They don't
bass
have
going
any,
on,
and it's true that it's hard. You tend to guess the bottom end, but you learn with them. But double check it, car checking headphones is as important.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, maybe you just get a second pair, even if they are a bit cheaper and they're 8-inch or 6.5.
I mean, some hi-fi.
Yeah, just
and hi-fi. I found hi-fi are not great for balancing levels and things like that, but they can be great to get a feel, because especially if they are the one that you use all the time to listen to music, surely they become an important reference to you.
Totally, absolutely. Nice one. So, unfortunately, we are out of time for today's FFL. Hopefully you got plenty of inspiration for the weekend, but if you're thirsty for more, make sure you check out our courses at pointblanklondon.com. We'll be back next week, where we'll be joined by Seamus Haji and Ski Oakenfold for a remix masterclass. We'll see you then. Cheers.